Before sunrise, in what is now northern Tanzania, a Hadza woman picks up a digging stick and walks into the bush. She is not hunting. She is the reason her family will eat today. Most people assume early humans survived mostly on meat. Big game, bloody kills, campfires loaded with roasted flesh. That image is mostly wrong. So what did ancient humans actually eat, meal by meal, across a single day? Long before the Hadza, long before the Kung, the first members of our genus were not apex predators. They were scavengers, cracking open the leftover bones of animals killed by something faster and stronger than them. Harvard biologist Richard Wrangham argued that the real turning point wasn't the spear. It was fire. Cooking softened food, broke down fiber, released calories raw chewing could never reach. A cooked root gave you more energy than the same root raw, for almost no extra effort. Wrangham believes that single shift, heat applied to food, may be the reason our brains could afford to grow as large as they did. Before that shift, digestion alone ate up nearly all the energy a human body had. After it, there was surplus, and surplus is what builds a brain. In 1968, the anthropologist Richard Lee spent months weighing every gram of food that came into a Kung camp. He expected meat to dominate the numbers. It didn't. Most of the calories came from a single plant, the mongongo nut. Pound for pound, it had more calories and protein than rice or wheat. A single grove of mongongo trees could feed a camp for weeks without a single hunt. The Kung didn't need to chase an animal to survive a normal week. They needed to walk to the nearest grove of trees, and most camps already knew exactly where every grove was. This is where the day actually begins. Dawn. You wake hungry, but not desperate. There is no breakfast waiting in a kitchen. There is the bush, and you already know exactly where to look. A Hadza child by age 6 can identify dozens of edible plants by sight, by smell, by the shape of a leaf. Anthropologist Alyssa Crittenden spent years recording exactly what Hadza children eat on a normal morning. Wild berries, picked straight off the bush. Baobab fruit, cracked open and sucked dry, the powder inside almost as tart as a lemon. Tubers, dug up from roots, most of us would walk past without ever noticing. Some tubers take real effort, 10 or 15 minutes of steady digging through hard, dry soil for a single root the size of your fist. This is not snacking. This is the meal. Children eat differently than adults do, even here. Crittenden's research found that Hadza toddlers are weaned onto baobab pulp and soft tubers years before they could ever chew tough meat. By the time a child is climbing trees alone, around age 8 or 9, they are already feeding themselves a meaningful share of their own calories, something almost no modern 8-year-old could do without a parent's help. Mid-morning. The group splits. Women and children head out to gather, the same task almost every single day, rain or shine, hot season or cold. Men sometimes hunt, sometimes track honey, sometimes do nothing at all. This matters because hunting is brutally unreliable. On most days, hunters come home with nothing. A successful kill on big game might happen once every few days, sometimes less. Gathering almost never fails. A woman with a digging stick can find calories in nearly any season, in nearly any weather, on nearly any day. That difference is the entire foundation of the ancestral diet. Meat was the bonus. Plants were the paycheck, the thing you could count on every single morning. Midday. This is when the real prize shows up. Honey. Researchers who study the Hadza have called honey the single most craved food in their entire diet, sometimes making up close to a fifth of their daily calories in the right season. Men will climb 30 feet up a tree, get stung dozens of times, and risk a bad fall, just for a few pounds of wild honeycomb. They do this with help from a bird. The greater honey guide leads humans straight to wild hives, chattering and flying ahead in short hops, because honey guides cannot break into a hive alone. Humans crack it open with smoke and an axe. The bird eats the wax. The humans eat the honey, larvae and all, chewed straight off the comb. This partnership is thousands of years old, maybe far older than agriculture itself, one of the only known cases of a wild animal and a human working together on purpose. Afternoon. The heat sets in, and so does the sharing. If someone returns with more food than they can eat, it does not stay theirs. Anthropologist Marlowe documented this constantly among the Hadza. A big kill, a good haul of tubers, a heavy comb of honey, all of it gets distributed across the entire camp, sometimes down to the smallest child. There is no concept of saving food for tomorrow. There is barely a way to store it. No refrigeration, no granary, no pantry. What you eat today, or you give it away, because tomorrow you may be the one with nothing. And here is the part nobody expects. The modern image of the high-protein, low-carb caveman gets this almost completely backwards. Most hunter-gatherer diets that have actually been measured lean heavily toward plants, not meat. Tubers, nuts, fruit, and honey made up the bulk of daily calories across most studied groups. Meat showed up in bursts, not as a daily guarantee. Researcher Herman Poncer, who tracked Hadza energy use for years, found their diet shifted hard with the seasons. In the dry season, more meat, more honey, more hunting. In the wet season, far more berries, far more tubers, almost no big game at all. There was no single, fixed, caveman diet. There was only whatever the season actually offered. The paleo image of constant grilled steak was never the typical Tuesday. It was the rare, lucky Saturday. And it wasn't just the Hadza who proved there was no single recipe. The Inuit, far to the north, had almost no plants to gather at all. For most of the year, their diet was overwhelmingly fat and meat, seal, whale, fish, because the tundra offered nothing else. Meanwhile, groups in the Amazon basin ate a diet closer to 90% plant foods, supplemented by fish and small game. Human bodies adapted to whatever the land in front of them actually provided. There was never one true ancestral diet. There were thousands, each one shaped by a different stretch of coastline, forest, ice field, or desert, each one correct for the place it actually came from. Evening. Whatever came in that day gets cooked together. Roots roasted in coals. Meat, if there is any, shared down to the smallest piece. Wild greens boiled soft in water, carried back from a hole dug in a dry riverbed. Nothing wasted, because nothing was guaranteed tomorrow. The whole camp eats together, the same way they have for longer than any city has existed. This diet was not nutritionally simple. Some studies estimate hunter-gatherer groups regularly ate well over 100 different plant and animal species across a single year. Compare that to the modern average. Most people today eat from a list of maybe a dozen staple foods, on repeat, for their entire lives. Wheat, rice, corn, sugar, dairy. A handful of others, dressed up 1,000 different ways. We traded constant variety for constant convenience. We traded unpredictable abundance for guaranteed abundance, available any hour, any season, without a single digging stick, without a single failed hunt. Nobody is suggesting you go dig for tubers tomorrow. The grocery store solved real, brutal problems. Famine, spoiled meat, children dying in lean seasons, something that happened far too often in the world Richard Lee studied. But somewhere in that trade, something else went quiet. The walk to find your food. The bird that leads you to honey. The 100 different flavors your ancestors knew by name, and you have never tasted once. Your body still expects that kind of variety. It was built for 100 different foods, arriving in waves through every season, not 12 foods arriving the same way, every single day. Your gut still carries the same enzymes, the same hunger signals, built for unpredictability, for feast, for shortage, for the long walk between the two. None of that disappeared. It just stopped being needed. The supermarket answered every question your body used to ask on its own, every single morning, before it knew where its next meal was coming from. And every time you eat, some very old part of you is still waiting for the bush, the digging stick, the honey guide, calling you towards something you forgot how to look for.